This land was made for you and me. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to New York Island, from Florida to Costa Rica. This land was made for you and me.
Can you hear me? All right. Thank you so much, Sean and Patrick. You guys are wonderful. I appreciate it so much. Oh my gosh. Look at this crowd. This is the best looking group of people in Des Moines. Yes, you are. You're gorgeous. My name is Katie Jewett. I am the finance director for the Pete D'Alessandro campaign, and I am so glad to be with you. And now I have to bring up the tacky subject of money. As the finance director for Pete, I spend all day looking at the numbers. And typically in situations like this, we get numbers that end in 5s or in 0s. But I watch these numbers and I keep seeing these amounts, like $7.25 or $2.33, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on here. And I realize that people are giving their minimum wage. So that's not right. That's not right. And we're here because we want to fix that. Yep. Now, it means the world to me to see people from Huntsville, Alabama, or Reno, Nevada, or Houston, Texas, or right here in Iowa giving an hour of their labor because they believe in Pete so much, because they believe in this movement so much. And so I want to ask something of y'all today. After you've heard Marty, after you've heard Pete, after you've heard Bernie, consider stopping by the donation table. You give a lot to our movement. You give your time and you give your talent. And we ask that you also share your treasure, so we can take it and give back to Iowa. Now, I have the pleasure of introducing one of the hardest working state reps in Bernie Nation. Marty Anderson is here with us today. Thank you so much.
Are you fired up and ready to help elect Democrats in November? I hope so. I hope you're fired up every day from now till November. It's kind of dark up here. Should have memorized this, right? My name is Marty Anderson, and I have the pleasure of representing 30,000 people in Northwest Des Moines, House District 36. And I help make laws for 3.1 million Iowans every day. What I bear witness to every day at the Iowa Capitol is the unbelievable capacity of Republicans in the majority to break things. The budget, the unions, education, Medicaid, the courts, mental health, state revenue, our waterways and our magnificent soil. You name it, they break it. Republicans simply don't seem to know how to solve a problem. I'll tell you who does know how to solve a problem. Pete D'Alessandro. Pete, my superhero. Pete's a superhero who has dedicated over 30 years of work for causes, candidates, and people. And he has helped win many progressive battles. Pete's union father and his homemaker mother instilled in their five to make a difference with underrepresented communities. In his free time, Pete volunteered with local candidates and enjoyed that opportunity to help improve his community and his state. But Pete was drawn to become a full-time community and political organizer. Thank goodness he landed in Iowa. He came here to help Leonard Boswell be elected as the first new Democrat in Congress from Iowa in a decade. Yeah. Pete also played a key role in the election of Tom Vilsack, Iowa's first Democratic governor in a generation and in decades. Yay, Tom. We are all thankful that Pete made Des Moines his home. He's advised Iowa Democratic candidates from the presidential level down ballot, including me. Pete was my first campaign manager. Yeah. From Pete's base in Des Moines, he's worked throughout the country, fighting and winning battles for workers, for small business, and for everyday taxpayers. Pete served as Iowa political director for Governor Chet Culver. In that role, he traveled throughout Iowa. This is when he became an Iowan. He traveled throughout Iowa and witnessed firsthand how government can positively affect lives. He worked through the floods of 2008. He advocated for marriage equality after the 2009 South Supreme Court Varnum case. And after his time in the governor's office, Pete focused his organizing and politics on candidates and ideals that ensure that Americans have an equal opportunity to succeed. And in his most superpowered work, Pete was campaign coordinator for the historic Bernie Sanders campaign in Iowa. In that campaign, they began 56 points down, but they grew exponentially to shock the political pundits with the now famous near tie on caucus night. He worked in 6 more states for Senator Sanders, finishing as his delegate coordinator director at the Democratic National Convention. I can tell you that Pete D'Alessandro is running for Iowa's 3rd congressional district, and he will fight for a 15-hour livable wage. Yeah. He will fight to expand Medicare for all, to ensure universal health care. He will fight for tuition-free college. And he he will lead on addressing the global climate crisis. I could not be more proud or honored to introduce my mentor and friend, Pete D'Alessandro, our next 3rd Congressional District Congressman from Iowa.
Before I start out, I do want to do a few thank yous to Sean and Patrick. At least Sean and Patrick, go for the music. Outstanding. Thank you so much for keeping everybody entertained while we were waiting. I want to thank Chris from Curate, who for the last couple of weeks has been putting up with everything that we've asked for and has been so important in making this venue so great the way it looks tonight. And I just want to thank everybody here at Curate for all they've done for us. I want to do something that we don't do enough of in politics. I want to thank just a remarkable campaign team that has put us in a position where we are today, that worked hard on this event. And when I say a remarkable campaign team, I mean the team that's there every day that's on staff, but I also mean an incredible group of volunteers that work so hard on this event and are working so hard throughout this district. And I want to make sure that you know how much I appreciate you and thank you for everything you've done. And of course, I want to thank my friend Marty Anderson, who is truly one of the great progressive voices in our state legislature. And I think as important, for a lifetime before she was elected, she was a great progressive voice for the things that mattered for people in this state. For a lifetime she did that. I am proud to have her support in this campaign. I am prouder to call her a friend.
Yeah.
When I first was deciding whether we were going to make this run, I traveled the district, 16 counties. And regardless of where we were, urban area, rural area, regardless of whether we were in an event that was sponsored by the party, an event that was sponsored by a group, or an event that we put together, whether we were in a diner talking one-on-one, whether we were in a small group or in an auditorium, as I was trying to decide whether I would make this race, every single time, as I would leave wherever I was, I would hear this voice in the back of my head. And it was the voice of one of my old bosses, Paul Wellstone. And Paul Wellstone, and I would hear his voice in the back of my head. And he would say, you know, Pete, sometimes in order to win a fight, you gotta pick a fight. And that's when I decided I am gonna pick a fight with David Young. And I will tell you this, if you honor me with your nomination, he will know he was in a fight come next November. Now, it may not always be noticeable, but this is not a Des Moines accent. I wasn't born here. You'll hear a lot about that. That seems to be something that some folks like to talk about here, and that's okay. But as another old boss of mine used to say, Tom Vilsack, I wasn't born here, but I got here as quick as I could. I'll tell you. And where I did grow up, just outside of the city of Chicago, 4 siblings, the oldest, stay-at-home mom, and a diaper man for a father. Now, I don't know if you guys all know what that is here, but here's what my dad did for 40 years. For nearly 40 years, my dad would get up every day, and he had a truck that was a little smaller than a UPS truck, and he would deliver diapers to young couples who had infants or toddlers. And then he would take their soiled diapers and he would throw them in the back of that truck. And he had about 180 or 200 stops a day. And at the end of the day, my dad would take it back to the plant. He would unload those soiled diapers. And then there was another team there that cleaned them. And the next day, the whole process started again. My dad used to say he was one of the few people in the Midwest that worked outside that actually preferred the winters over the summers. But the reason I tell that story, the reason that I say that story every chance I get, is because of this simple fact. And it's part and parcel of why I'm running for Congress, and it's part and parcel of why I want to be a congressman. You see, my dad's work ethic would have been the same regardless. That neighborhood that I was able to grow up in, that I talked to you about because of his hard work, great neighbors, great schools with better teachers, the reason my family was able to grow up in a neighborhood like that, to grow up in a situation where my dad left that house every day, he knew if something unforeseen happened to him, his family would be taken care of, was because in front of that diaper man, the adjective in front of it was Teamster diaper man. My dad was a labor man. The reason my family was able to live in dignity was because my father had a union contract. And I will tell you right now that if I am elected to the United States Congress, I will not just fight against the things that have been happening over the course of the last generation to take things away from the labor movement. I will be an advocate, and I will fight every day to make it easier to organize, to make it more for people to join the labor movement, so that every kid in this country can grow up in the same dignity that I was able to grow up in as working people. Now, I told you earlier that I want this fight with David Young. And one of the reasons I want this fight with David Young is, since Donald Trump has been elected president, David Young has voted with him more than any other congressman in the United States of America. He is his number one enabler, right here in the middle of America, in the middle of the Bible.
That ain't right.
That ain't right. But let me tell you something else. Now, that is part of what we're talking about. But we have to be clear as progressives, and we have to be clear as Democrats, that it is not enough. It is not enough just to think that we are going to get swept in on a wave because people don't like Donald Trump. Because we know people don't. That's just the facts. But if we decide that we're only going to do it that way, and hope a wave helps us to win an election, we will keep ourselves from being able to win the future. It is not enough just to win an election. And the way that we are going to win the future, the way that we will win the future for Democrats, for progressives, and for this country, is to stand for a bold, progressive agenda. I believe that with all of my heart. And I'll tell you a little bit about what I think we should be talking about, not just here in Iowa, but around this country. I believe that if you work hard, if you do everything you were supposed to do, played by the rules, nobody in this country should be denied secondary education because their parents didn't make enough money, or they didn't want to go into debt in order to study what they want to study. I believe that we can find the will and we can make college and secondary education affordable by and what I mean by affordable is tuition free for anyone who's earned it. There is not a state in this union, there is not one state in this union that if you make less than $15 an hour, you can get a 2-bedroom apartment. Who gets 2-bedroom apartments? Young people that are just starting out, that maybe want to stay in that community that they grew up in, but they're not quite in a situation where they can buy a house yet. Single parents who are working hard to give their kids the dignity that we talked about earlier. I will fight every day as a United States Congressman for a federal minimum wage. The debate starts at $15 an hour because the debate at $15 an hour, and I understand it. I get it. I know it's an economic issue. I know it's an economic issue. But brothers and sisters, it is a social justice issue much more than it is an economic issue. And this party and this progressive movement has always been at its best when we have stood for social justice. And something out of the headlines of the tragedy of the last week that actually is a specific point to a larger problem. In this country right now, half of the guns in this country are owned by 3% of the people. That's a fact. 64% of households in this country right now don't have a gun in it. And that's fine. But listen to these numbers. So we have 64% of the households that don't have a gun. But regardless of whether you have one or not in your house, over 80% of the people in this country, 80% believe that we need stronger background checks when someone wants to go in and buy a gun. 80% of Americans believe that we should close the gun show loophole. Over 80%. Almost 90% of Americans believe that we should make it tougher for those that are struggling with mental illness to be able to purchase a gun. And yet, we have not even seen a serious discussion about this issue in the United States Congress. They don't even discuss it, let alone get to the point where we can advocate for these things. Why we're not having this discussion? The reason we are not having a discussion where 80% or more people support these things, including a ban on assault rifles. The reason that we are not having this discussion is because the NRA is playing in a rigged system in which they can buy congressmen like David Young, and even though 80% of the people want to talk about these issues and want to solve these issues, this is a campaign finance reform issue. We need to reform the system we have right now, and I have been an advocate every day for that to happen. It is time for this nation. This nation is as rich as we are. As much as we've done for people here and throughout the world, to join, as my friend Bernie Sanders says, those nations that we have historically called our allies, our friends. And we need to codify into law a very simple but powerful truth. Healthcare is not a privilege. Healthcare is a birthright. I believe that is a Medicare for all system. I will fight for that every day as the United States Congressman if you give me a nomination and you elect me to the United States Congress. We are working on a second generation of seniors that are living in dignity because this country and this party had the will and the boldness to make it happen. We can make it happen for the rest of our citizens. I believe that with all my heart. Coincidentally, the Iowa primary is on right at the 50th anniversary of when we lost Robert Kennedy. And Robert Kennedy used to say that the future might be beyond our sight, but it's not beyond our grasp. And that we have an obligation to grab it and to mold it to our will. I believe with all of my heart that if we stand for these things, not just here in Iowa, if we stand for these things throughout this country, a generation from now, they will be meeting in rooms like this, and they will say, that is the time that the Democratic Party found its soul again. That is the time that the Democratic Party heeded the words of Robert Kennedy. And instead of just trying to win elections, they attempted to win the future. And because they attempted to win the future, they started winning elections again. I believe working together, shoulder to shoulder, we can make the will of the people the law of this land. Thank you very much. In May of 2015, and I just want to tell this story because I think it's so important about the movement that so many of you were a part of and why it happened. In May of 2015, a senator from Vermont who was thinking about running for president called me to find out about Iowa and how Iowa works and what it would take to win Iowa. And because you have to do that. Because if you're going to be a serious candidate for President of the United States, you're going to have to go through Iowa. And we all know that. So on my first call with Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont, I've been doing this for 25 years. Two things happened that I had never had a person who didn't know me ask me before. First question he asked was, Pete, You understand my politics? And I said, yes, sir, I do. And then the second question wasn't about, well, how do we organize? How do I win? How does this thing work? The second question, and this is the important question that made all the difference, and is why we're still here today in this movement. The second question was, are you comfortable with them? I could have been David Axelrod or James Carville, but if I wasn't comfortable with what the movement was supposed to be, it wouldn't have worked. And Bernie Sanders knew that. And Bernie Sanders wasn't going to accept anything less at that point, even though he was 55 or 50 points down in the polls. That is the reason that this movement continued. And for the next 16 months, not just in Iowa, I had the unbelievable experience to be part of a campaign and a movement that was both joyful and purposeful at the same time. Not just in Iowa, in 6 other states where we brought the message to. Winning states and winning places that they told us we couldn't even compete in because of people like you. Some of you, exactly you, but people all over this country just like you. And as we did that, I knew that standing shoulder to shoulder with so many of you, that this movement was led by Bernie Sanders, but it was powered by people like you throughout this country. And so it is such an honor. It is such an honor for me to introduce to you the man who I really believe embodies that idea that RFK was talking about grabbing the future and being willing to do it. The junior senator from Vermont, another old boss, my hero, Senator Bernie Sanders.
Thank you so much, Des Moines, for your efforts to elect Pete D'Alessandro as your next United States Congressman. And a few minutes ago, I saw this young woman, Kirsten, wearing that T-shirt. And I asked her to come up, because that T-shirt tells it all. That T-shirt tells us that we are in the process in Iowa, in Illinois, in Vermont, all over this country of transforming American politics, of ending government by the rich and for the rich, to a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And I am here today because Pete D'Alessandro is in the middle of that transformational struggle. And I want to tell you that the political revolution is sweeping this country, winning victory after victory after victory. And I want to thank Pete and all of the people in Iowa who worked for our campaign here, and the people of Iowa who supported our ideas for helping to lead that political revolution. When we came into Iowa, we were, 40, 50 points behind, and we ended up just losing by a half. And that's because of the work that so many of you and Pete did. But here is the most important point about what Iowa is about. We came into Iowa with a set of ideas that at the time seemed very, very radical. Yeah. And all over this country, people were saying, oh, those ideas are too radical, you got to go more mainstream. People in Iowa are not going to accept those ideas. Well, the people of Iowa did, and we went to New Hampshire, we won by 20 points, and we ended up winning 23 states throughout the country. And all of that started right here in Iowa. And what started in Iowa was the idea that when we talked about making certain that if in America you work 40 hours a week, you should not live in poverty, because we should have a national minimum wage of $15 an hour. Oh my, that was a radical idea. Because the federal minimum wage is $7.25, and we wanted to more than double it. But you know what has happened since? And we don't want to take all credit for great people all over the country working on this. But as you know, in state after state, community after community, my own state of Vermont, the legislature just voted for a $15 an hour minimum wage. Seemed like a radical idea until we brought it to the people, and the people said, no, it's not so radical, it makes sense. Right now, all across this country, there are states and communities that are saying, as Pete has said, that in a competitive global economy, if our young people are going to get decent paying jobs, we have got to make public colleges and universities tuition free. Was a radical idea a couple of years ago. Nobody was talking about it. Well, right now there are states and communities doing just that. Thank you, Iowa, for helping to make that happen. Here in Iowa, we talked about a broken criminal justice system that has more people in jail in America than any other country on earth. We spend $80 billion a year at the state, local, and federal level locking people up. And we talked about the need to end the war on drugs, which has failed so badly. That we were not going to arrest people, sometimes jail people, but destroy people's lives for the crime, among other things, of smoking marijuana. And have you noticed what's been going on in this country in the last couple of years? State after state, decriminalizing marijuana or legalizing marijuana. During this campaign here in Iowa, we came before the people of this state and we said there is something fundamentally wrong when in the United States we are the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people at the right level. And the truth is that at that time, there were very few people who were talking about the need for us to pass a Medicare for all single-payer system. But we took that idea to the people of Iowa and they said, you know what? Kind of makes sense that health care should be a right, not a privilege. Now what you're seeing all across the country is more and more candidates coming on board the idea that Medicare for all is the most cost-effective, intelligent way to guarantee health care to all Americans. And I thank Pete Alessandro for being part of that effort. When we began the campaign, when we came here to Iowa, the general thought was that to run for office, the only way you could be successful, the only way you could raise the money that you need was to go to wealthy people and go to super PACs and get down on your hands and knees and say to the rich people, tell me what you want, give me money, and I'll represent you in the Congress. We changed that. Now all across the country, progressives understand that the political future is not with super PACs, it's not catering to the billionaire class, it is asking working people for $10 or $20. That's the way we're going to fund campaigns for the future. And Pete Alessandro understands that when we talk about campaign finance, not only do you get your money from individual contributions, from small contributions, more importantly, we need fundamental campaign finance reform in this country, which means overturning that disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision. And moving toward the public funding of elections. Pete and I hold a very radical idea that in America it should not be billionaires buying elections, but one person, one vote deciding who our Congress and our representatives are. So my point about all that is to say that we have an enormous amount of work to be done. But that the ideas that we brought forth, not only in terms of issue after issue, but of making the point that we need ordinary people, working people, young people, to understand that the future belongs to them and that they must get involved in the political process. And we are seeing that all across the country. We saw that a few months ago in Virginia. I loved it. In Virginia, a lot of candidates ran for what they call the House of Delegates, the state legislature there, and a Republican leader on election night said, "This is unbelievable. We were losing to candidates we never even heard of." In other words, young people and working people, for the first time, were getting involved. They were running and they were winning. They were women. They were gay. They were black. People from all parts of our country. And if anything, what the political revolution means is don't sit aside and think that the other person is so smart that they deserve to be in Congress, they deserve to be president, they deserve to be in the state legislature. Break through that psychological wall. Trust me, I work in the United States Senate. And if some of these guys could sit there, everybody in this room can be on the school board or state legislature. One of the impediments that we have is that for many of us who have not come from wealthy families, working class families, it's a little bit hard when you begin. Hey, am I smart enough? You know, my dad was not a big shot. Can I do it? And I want everybody in the room to understand that if you have a heart with compassion If you're willing to work hard, yeah, you could do it. So I would hope that people here not only get heavily involved in Pete's campaign, you think about running for school board, think about running for city council, think about running for legislature, think about running for anything you want. The future depends upon millions of people getting involved, and I beg of you, please get involved. Here is the reason why you need to be involved, and here is the reason why we need Pete D'Alessandro in the United States Congress. And that is, we are living in a very unusual political moment in American history. We have a president who is perhaps the least qualified president in American history. Someone who has little knowledge or, in fact, interest in public policy. Now, I am more than aware that Trump won here in Iowa. That is not a great secret. No. Let's just talk about it. I believe that the vast majority of Trump supporters are not racists, are not sexists, are not homophobes, they're not xenophobes. I believe that the reason, not here, just here in Iowa, but all over this country, that so many people voted for Trump is that they are hurting. They're hurting economically, and they were looking around, and Trump was saying a lot of things that appealed to them. Trump said, I, Donald Trump, I'm going to take on the establishment. I, Donald Trump, I'm going to provide health care to all. I'm going to take on the drug companies and lower the cost of prescription drugs. I, Donald Trump, I'm going to stop your job going abroad. We're going to get them to reinvest in America. Well, it turned out that Donald Trump is a pathological liar. He lied to the people of this country during the campaign, and he has been lying virtually every day since. When Trump told the American people that he was going to provide health care to everybody, that sounded pretty good. It turns out that he ended up supporting legislation that would have thrown over 30 million Americans off of the health insurance that they currently have. Now, I think that if the people of Iowa and people all over this country knew that that was his plan, if Trump had the guts to campaign by saying, I'm going to throw tens of millions of people off of the health care that they already have, I doubt very much that Trump would have won Iowa or many other states. All of you will remember Trump getting up there. He said, I'm a different type of Republican. I'm not Paul Ryan, literally. That's what he said. And he said, I am not going to cut Medicare or Medicaid or Social Security. Not me. I'm not going to do it. I want everybody in Iowa to know that he lied to you about that as well. I'm the ranking member of the Budget Committee. He brought a budget which would cut Medicaid by $1 trillion over 10 years. $1 trillion. And in Iowa, all over the country, we are concerned about the opioid epidemic. Well, a lot of people get their treatment for opioid addiction through Medicaid. People go to nursing homes on Medicaid. Children get their health care on Medicaid. He said he wouldn't cut it. He cut it, proposed to cut it by $1 trillion. He said he wouldn't cut Medicare. His budget includes over $500 billion in cuts over a 10-year period for Medicaid. He said he wouldn't cut Social Security. His budget includes billions of dollars in cuts to Social Security. Trump campaigned and he said, you know, I want tax reform that is going to benefit working people, not the rich. Well, guess what? His tax bill at the end of 10 years provides 83% of the benefits to the top 1%. He lied on that too. Some of you may have noticed just the other day, Bill Gates, one of the richest people in America. Gates came forward and he said, I am a multi-billionaire. I don't need a tax break. I need to pay more in taxes. Bill Gates is right. So my point is that Trump told the American one thing, told the American people one thing, and he is doing the very opposite. In fact, what he has done is adopted the economic positions of the Koch brothers, which means massive tax breaks to the rich and large corporations, and at the same time, terrible, terrible cuts in healthcare, education, nutrition, environmental protection, all of the programs that middle class and lower income people depend upon. It's not just his horrific economic agenda to benefit the rich. It goes deeper than that. Every president in American history has understood that one of your jobs, one of your main jobs, is to bring the American people together. We're one nation. And what Trump has quite intentionally done for cheap political gain is tried to divide us up in an unprecedented way. Divide us up by the color of our skin, by the country that we came from, by our gender, by our sexual orientation, by our religion. Divide us up. And I say to Mr. Trump, this country has struggled forever with discrimination. And as a result of the work of incredibly brave people, women who stood up and said, no, we're not going to be second-class citizens. African Americans who stood up and said, we are going to end racism. The gay community that demanded to be treated with equality. We have struggled and struggled against all forms of bigotry and discrimination. And I say to you, President Trump, we are not going backwards, we are going forwards. Pete is running for Congress not just to oppose Trump's reactionary and divisive agenda. He's running for much more than that. He's running to stand with the working class and the middle class of this country, people today in Iowa and Vermont and all over this country who are working longer hours for lower wages, who are scared to death about the future of their children. And Pete understands that we must have, if this country is going to succeed, a government that represents all of us, not just the 1%. Understands that there is something fundamentally wrong with our economy when you have 3 of the wealthiest people in this country who own more wealth than the bottom half of the American people. And that there is something wrong when more and more income goes to the people on top rather than to the working families of this country. So Pete and I are going to work together to deal with the great issue of income and wealth inequality in America. And when Donald Trump and his friends talk about cutting Social Security, Pete knows that here in Iowa and in Vermont, and I don't know how they do it, but you've got elderly people and people with disabilities who are trying to get by on $12,000, $13,000 a year. Can you imagine people trying to survive on $12,000, $14,000 a year Social Security? And then you have Trump and the billionaire class saying, we need more tax breaks for Bill Gates, but we're going to have to cut Social Security. What Pete knows is, no, we're not going to cut Social Security. We're going to expand Social Security benefits. Pete knows that one of the great moral issues of our time deals with immigration and the need to protect the 1.8 million young people who are either in the DACA program or eligible to be in DACA, that we are not going to take away their legal status, and we're not going to sit back and allow anybody to deport. Understands that when we talk about communications and information, that the internet is the technology of the future, and we are going to fight against anybody who tries to end net neutrality. Now, Pete made the point during his remarks, which is the key point, is that on issue after issue, whether it is health care, where the vast majority of the American people believe that health care should be a right, whether it is tax reform, where the vast majority of the American people do not believe that billionaires need more tax breaks, or whether the issue is guns, where the vast majority of the American people believe we need sensible gun safety reform. What we are seeing is on issue after issue, Congress responds to the wealthy and the powerful and the special interests, not to the needs of the American people. Now you go out in Vermont, and we are a rural state. We've got a whole lot of gun owners. We've got a whole lot of hunters. Same thing here in Iowa, same thing all over America. And you ask people whether or not people should be able to buy guns without undergoing a background check, people will say that is nuts. And they say that in overwhelming numbers. We need to end the gun show loophole. And you ask people if it makes sense that somebody could be on a list keeping them from flying in an airplane because they're on a terrorist watch list, can't fly in a plane, but they go out and buy a gun. Anybody think that makes sense? No. And then you ask people whether we should end the so-called straw man provision, which means you can legally go into a gun shop, but then sell those weapons to criminals and people who should not have it. People say overwhelmingly we should end that as well. And more people are also saying, as Peter said, and I have said, as we see the tragedy in Parkland, as we saw the disaster in Las Vegas, is that assault weapons are meant to kill human beings. They are not meant for hunting. And that in a civilized society, a society that is concerned about its children, that is concerned about ordinary people, we have got to ban assault weapons designed to kill human beings. The point that I'm making here, and there are a lot of other things that we can do. It's a very difficult issue. The gun issue is very difficult. There are hundreds of millions of guns in this country. There are 5 million assault weapons that are out there already. And what is scary is that walking the streets of America today are thousands of people who may be suicidal, who may be homicidal. And what we have also got to do is to make sure that those people have access to the mental health treatment they need. Well, on issue after issue, whether it is immigration, where over 80% of the American people believe we should provide legal status to the DACA people, whether it is tax reform, whether it is health care, whether it is guns, on issue after issue. You got the American people saying one thing, and you got Congress doing the other thing. So what this campaign is about, and what the political revolution is about, is demanding that the Congress represent the American people, working people, ordinary people, and not just wealthy campaign contributors and the billionaire class that today has so much influence over the economic and political life of this country. So what began here in Iowa has got to continue and has got to accelerate. What your job here, it seems to me, and all over this country, is for people to stand up, to fight back, and to create the kind of nation that we know we can be. And that begins right here with electing Pete D'Alessandro to the United States Congress. Thank you all very much.